I'd spent by 2009 several years in Iraq and about a year in Afghanistan. And some of the friends I had were journalists, but a lot of them were military. And when we got back, we would stay in touch by email or over Facebook. And a lot of my friends began to say how they felt different, and that when they would look in the mirror, they wouldn't recognize who they saw staring back, that their wives were scared of them, their children would sometimes be scared of them, and they were sometimes scared of themselves, and they would wonder what had happened to them, how had they changed, and why were they so disfigured by what they had seen and what they had done. And a couple of them talked about suicide, a couple of them attempted suicide, and a couple of them committed suicide. And this was devastating to me personally. Setting aside my life as a journalist, these are people I knew. And these are people who had come through Iraq and Afghanistan through very bloody periods of both wars. And they came through that without a scratch. And then they came back here, and something that they carried with them ultimately took their lives. And I found that just completely devastating. And I began to ask around and read up on what was happening to the military to try to see, were this just a cluster of people I knew, or was this something that was happening military-wide? And I kept hearing that it was becoming a problem and an epidemic all throughout the military. 2009 was an important year. That was the first year where the military suicide rate was higher than the civilian suicide rate. It had never happened before in the history of the military. And this was, to me, a time to write about it, a time to try to capture what was happening to our military as the war was beginning to shift. And when I was at the Pentagon, I would say to friends who worked there, who should I meet? Who's doing something interesting? And they would always say, Mark Graham. They would talk about how he had lost 2 sons. One had killed himself, one had died in Iraq, that he was now at a base that had the highest suicide rate of any base in the country, and that he was trying to change how that base operated. And I called Mark, and I asked if I could come see him. Immediately he said yes, which is rare when you're a reporter, that a general says, sure, come on the next plane. Mark and Carol, in a very literal way, have devoted their lives to trying to keep fighting against suicide, to keep fighting stigma, which is what keeps a lot of people who are in the military from seeking help. And Mark and Carol spend day after day after day traveling the country, telling their story. And they hope that, and they often say this, that there may be one person in the room of 100 or 200 who decides they will see this issue differently. And that was the beginning. I did a long story about them for the Wall Street Journal. When that story ran, the response from readers was extraordinary. People who said, I need to meet this man. People who said, something like this happened to me, to someone I know. And we ultimately thought that it was a story worth telling in a book, to try to capture what was happening to our military at this moment in time.